Now let's study the balance sheet or output of fermentation in case of both alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. With respect to the release of ATP, that is energy. Okay, with respect to the release of energy, that is ATP, and carbon dioxide and water. In the previous video, I have given explanation why we study this balance sheet or output of each and every pathway like glycolysis, anaerobic respiration, that is fermentation, and even Krebs cycle with respect to ATP formation, carbon dioxide and water. Okay, let's start with ATP. ATP formation in case of alcoholic fermentation. Okay, ATP is formed through SLP and oxidative phosphorylation. Through SLP, how many ATPs are formed in glycolysis? Fermentation means we have to calculate from glycolysis till the end of alcoholic fermentation. Okay, through SLP, how many ATPs are formed? 4 ATPs are formed in glycolysis, through glycolysis. But whereas in alcoholic fermentation, there is no direct formation of ATP, that is through SLP. Next, coming to OP, oxidative phosphorylation. Actually, through glycolysis, there is release of 2 molecules of NADH plus H plus, but these 2 molecules of NADH plus H plus which are released during glycolysis are utilized during fermentation, alcoholic fermentation, and hence there is no formation of ATP, and hence there is no oxidation of this NADH and H plus through ETS, so that there is no formation of ATP through this NADH plus H plus. So OP 0. So total number of ATP formed are 4 ATPs. 4 ATPs. Among these 4 ATPs, how many molecules of ATP is utilized? 2 molecules of ATP is utilized. Where they are utilized, used up during glycolysis. In which step? That is in first step and third step. In first step 1 ATP is utilized, and in third step of glycolysis 1 ATP is utilized. So minus 2 ATP. Used up is 2 ATP. So net gain of ATP is 2. So net gain of ATP is 2 in case of both alcoholic fermentation and even in lactic acid fermentation also the same case. Even in the lactic acid fermentation also the same case applies. Next, coming to, let's study formation of water. Water formation. Water formation in both alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. Okay, water formation. Actually, water formation, how we study? We study this water formation with respect to direct formation of water, that is dehydration, by means of dehydration, direct formation of water. Direct formation of water. How many dehydrations occur during glycolysis? 1 dehydration. During that 1 dehydration, how many molecules of water is released? 2 molecules of water is released. At which step? 9th step. So 2 molecules of water is released by direct formation of water, that is by dehydration. Next, metabolic water. What is this metabolic water? The water which is formed through metabolic pathway, that is ETS, due to the oxidation or breakdown of NADH or FADH2 is called as metabolic water. Here the NADH2 which is formed during glycolysis is utilized in fermentation, that is in alcoholic and even in lactic acid fermentation, and hence there is no breakdown, there is no entry of NADH2 into ETS for its breakdown, and hence there is no formation of metabolic water. So metabolic water is 0. There is no formation. So totally how many molecules of water is formed now? Total number of water molecules formed is, total is 2 water molecules. And how many water molecules are used up? 2 molecules of water is used up. Where they are used up? They are used up in 6th step. Here we studied water molecules are used up, during which 3-phosphoglyceraldehyde is converted into 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid. So 2 water molecules are used. So what is the net gain of water? 0. Net gain. So there is no net gain of water. during fermentation, even in alcoholic and lactic acid fermentation also. Now let's study the formation of carbon dioxide, release of carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide formation. So in case of alcoholic fermentation, there is formation of two carbon dioxide molecules as during the decarboxylation of pyruvic acid into acetaldehyde. Whereas in case of lactic acid fermentation, there is no release of carbon dioxide because there is no decarboxylation. There is no step of decarboxylation. Hence, there is no release of carbon dioxide. So, this is all about output or balance sheet of fermentation, that is both alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. Now, let's see what are the products of alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. By the end of alcoholic fermentation, the end products are ethyl alcohol, and how many ATPs will be formed? 2 ATPs will be formed, and there is no water, but there is release of 2 molecules of carbon dioxide, and 2 NAD plus is also released. NAD plus, because NADH provides protons and electrons and releases to NAD plus. Next, coming to lactic acid fermentation. In case of lactic acid fermentation, what are the end products? Lactic acid which is 3 carbon compound. Here ethyl alcohol is 2 carbon compound. Here lactic acid is 3 carbon compound. Lactic acid, and how many ATPs? Net gain of ATP? 2 ATP, and no carbon dioxide and no water. So there is no carbon dioxide formation, but in alcoholic fermentation there is the release of 2 carbon dioxides and 2 NAD plus are released. So this is the output or balance sheet of fermentation, that is anaerobic respiration in case of both alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. In the next video, let's start with aerobic respiration. In aerobic respiration occurs by glycolysis, Krebs cycle and ETS. Glycolysis is the first pathway which is common for both aerobic and anaerobic. We already studied glycolysis. Then next, let's start with Krebs cycle, which is the part of aerobic respiration. Thank you, students.